Hey guys, Gavin with Haverstick Designs, and I'm here today at 416 Wabash with Chris and Mitch. So thanks for joining us, guys.
Thanks for coming down.
Yeah. This is actually a really local project for us. It's awesome to be able to drive 30 minutes and be able to be here at the studios in Indianapolis downtown. So tell me a little bit. I guess we'll start with Chris, your background and like how you got to where you are here. And
I went graduated from IU and then decided I wanted to go to music school. So I went to Berklee College of Music, and probably like 80% of the people that go there, I did about a semester, and I was like, wow, that's enough. I've learned everything I wanted to learn. Ended up moving to New York and then Austin, played in a band. And then when I moved back to Indy in 2002, one of the guys that was in a band with me, we decided to open a studio. So we opened a studio up on the north side of Indy called Music Garage. We had that for about 13, 14 years. And we're kind of outgrowing it and kind of felt like we needed to change. Mitch had come along in like 2014 maybe.
Sounds about right, yeah.
So we were kind of looking to expand into doing more like live performances, film and record them. And that's when we got the idea to maybe branch out and look into a bigger space. We found this venue. It was way more than what we thought, but we were like, let's try it. And that's when I did some research and I found you and was like blown away by all the pictures I'd seen of the studios that you designed. I was like, I want mine to look like that. Nice. So got a hold of you, and then, probably took us 6 months or so to get all of it built and put together. And ever since then, we've just been chugging along.
All right, so we're gonna do the studio walkthrough here at 416 Wabash. The sign does say no access, do not enter, but I think only. I got permission, so we're gonna go ahead and do that. We start in the control room. One of the design elements that we wanted to have was that the control room was oriented to face where the stage would normally be. It's got a lot of funky angles to it, and I know that that was not an easy thing when it came to actually constructing this space, because a lot of times most buildings are built with right angles, sure. and the only parallel surfaces in this room are the back wall and the front wall. Was that a challenge with the contractor and everything to get it all laid out?
The hardest thing for them to do is when we floated the floor, getting the perimeter of the floor right the first time. They were having trouble getting those angles right.
Yeah,
sure.
So Mitch and I had to draw like concentric circles.
High school geometry and stuff.
To point out where the actual corners were at what angle so they could get them right.
One kind of hidden gem at the old space and other studios that we've been in, a lot of the times the artist is right in front of the console or right in front of everything.
Yep.
And people feel subconscious.
Yeah.
I've heard that Lemmy from Motorhead like encased himself and faced away kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So one of the cool aspects of having the booth to the right is that, if people bring friends or the rest of the band, only I can see them.
Yeah.
And if even then I can just totally avoid them. So people feel more comfortable.
Yeah, and then I know that obviously isolation was a big part of this because we wanted to make sure that you weren't disturbing if you wanted to have an event out there at the same time and be able to track in here and vice versa. And so it's a floated floor. Actually, looking at the floor, it's wild because this is the exact flooring I have in my kitchen.
No way.
Exact flooring, yes.
It's real hardwood, so it's not cheap laminate, and that was more expensive probably than it would have been had it been laminate, but it's not all clacky.
Yeah, it sounds better too.
Better.
I always tell people with the flooring, it's kind of like good, better, best. Like best would be natural hardwood, better would be engineered hardwood, and then anything below that would be laminates and things that you kind of want to avoid. Because I always tell people it's like, imagine building an acoustic guitar out of whatever flooring you're putting down. Yeah. Like it's like that
That's
kind
how
of
it'll sound.
Tinny sound that you would get off a laminate.
You need rosewood and spruce and bubinga and all
things
that.
Like that.
Yeah,
so
it makes a difference.
Yeah, so the isolation piece, we have like a floated room. Everything's kind of disconnected from the structure. I know that we had to tie back a few times for structural reasons, but we tried to do that in a resilient way. Also with the doors, they're from ISO Store, and you can see these doors are very thick and they're heavy. They're like 350 pounds a piece. And did you guys install these yourself?
We did. Yeah. So we know exactly how much they weigh. Because it's almost like a vacuum, but you don't feel like you're in a vacuum. Yeah. It just straight cuts. The biggest thing we get, especially coming from such a live room, everybody always references the Ace Ventura thing when he's on the sliding door, how he screams and then shuts it. We
were talking off camera a little bit before. It was just like, building a studio is it's It takes a little longer than you think it's going to. It's more work, and everybody sees like really nice photos of studios on the cover of a magazine, and it's just like, oh, that probably came together in a few months.
They don't see the put together. I mean, fortunately for us, Mitch has a killer set of tools. He's got everything. So, and he's carpenter inclined. I don't know. He's really good with cutting wood and stuff like that. I had no experience in cutting and trimming, so it was a learning experience for me as well.
So Mitch, tell me some of your background as well.
Sure. Fortunately, I kind of grew up in a partridge family. Everybody played an instrument, everybody sang, kind of a thing. So I knew what I wanted to do since I was a little dude. Ended up going to Ball State for their music tech program. And then I went to grad school here in town at IUPUI for audio engineering. And then I interned at the Lodge, which was kind of fortuitous because Chris had worked there before too. So we knew the same people, the gear, all the stuff, the rooms. And then after they hired me on there, and then after about a year or 2 years, I wanted to find a different spot and kind of just fell in line with Chris. We had worked at the same place. We kind of felt the same about how to run a business, sound, this is how you do it, this is how you don't do it.
He literally just walked in the studio one day and said, "Are you hiring?" I was like, "Absolutely."
That's awesome.
Hired him on the spot, and he took over right away.
It's cool to be in here all the time, and it's cool to have seen it from the jump too.
Yeah, those were from Overtone Acoustics, I believe,
That's right,
who did those, and quadratic residue diffuser on the back wall. Because if you over-absorb this back wall, the room just becomes lifeless and doesn't feel natural. Because we're not used to being in spaces overly controlled. You know, like some reflection is good, and so especially with the speakers firing directly at that back wall, if it was just all absorption, it would just sound dead and lifeless in here.
We have a secret too. That's no longer going to be secret. But one of these is like a hidden bookshelf trick.
Oh, no
it's
way.
this one. Yeah.
There we go.
It comes out. So we got a little note on it.
Tell Mitch you found me. Oh, so it's a little game. It's like a mini game.
Because everybody, the first thing is all tactile, so they want to grab it, and then one of these didn't come connected.
There's also this. I don't know what that is.
That one probably needs a little adjustment.
I think that was $3,000, and you said to put it in.
Oh,
there,
little note. That was.
Okay. I think we needed one more screw in there, and we just didn't want that to fall on anybody's head and
I love it.
Puncture them. And then the way you designed it, it's a corner back there, but it is full floor to ceiling with Roxol.
Exactly.
I mean, it is stuffed in there as thick as we could get it.
Yeah, having those sidewalls kind of peek back to a triangle in the back, and you make use of that space for bass trapping because
we just jammed it in there.
Yeah, and these spaces, like every room, every control room, you can't really overdo it on the bass trapping side of things.
I remember you saying that.
Yeah, you're doing. You're trying to recreate, frequencies where the wavelengths are even longer than what the room is.
Right.
And so all this soffit trapping that we have around the perimeter, like the gray perimeter, a lot of times it just ends up looking like an architectural detail, but that's just fabric with insulation behind it.
Stuffed in there, and around the lights.
Yep, around the lights, and it's something where. That's a part of the room that's just not used. You wouldn't be doing anything up there anyway.
No doubt.
And it gives you the ability to put those recessed lights in without penetrating the isolation layers. This building used to be a nightclub.
Yeah, so it was purpose-built as an event space in 1998. They finished construction roughly 2000. It kind of started out as the event set, and it was a corporate event center. They did all kinds of events and stuff. And then in 2002, it morphed into club industry at the event set, and it became a nightclub. And it was a nightclub until about 2012, but it became notorious for fights and having too many people. Their capacity was way too high. They had a capacity of over 1,000. Previous owner just decided to close shop. So they were just using it to store stuff. Yeah. It had trailers and boats in here and weird
I remember
stuff.
coming in at that time, where there's still stuff in here.
It was like Chernobyl. It was just everything that was there.
Their last party, I think, was a Super Bowl party with Rick Ross, and they had like 40 cases of Budweiser stacked against the back wall. And so we were like, sweet. It was all 40 cases were skunked. Since 2016, we initially were going to do use the studio to film and record live events, kind of a la Austin City Limits.
Yeah.
But it was just a really large undertaking for just starting here in this building. So we kind of kiboshed that and just moved into just do the studio full time. And then the event space just says corporate events, birthday parties, social functions, stuff like that.
You guys have awesome gear here. I know that you worked with I think Jeff Barnett at Sweetwater.
Jeff Barnett's
a lot.
my guy at Sweetwater. He's he always calls and says, you know, we've got a special, or what are you looking for? And
strange how that happens. It's just like there's specials going on a lot.
Chris and I have always been a fan of SSL. A lot of the people that we look up to, mix engineers, people who track, doing everything, we've always loved SSL. We've found that you can really lean into it and it doesn't bark back, it just gets cooler.
Yeah.
So there are times where we'll track through it, we'll track through the gear, the 1176 and 1073 and everything, but then I'll print it back out of Pro Tools through the board and through the Pultec and back through the board and the G-Comp. I found that even my rough mixes and the mixes that we hit before mastering tend to be a little hot.
yeah.
Because one, people like louder, that's always a thing. We're still in loudness wars, but also it's fun to push it.
Yeah.
And it starts to get character and you start to feel the compression to where I've never been a neutral thing, and Chris isn't either. Just push it until it, right before it breaks and then back it off, and that's a killer record. You know?
That's cool.
It's been a great board. It definitely, it's super easy to hook up to the patch bay, has all the ins and outs you need.
Yeah.
I told Jared from Pro Audio LA what we had, and he just boop.
Yep.
He made the patch bay bass on the board.
That's great.
And our input panel, so that was super easy.
Well, and you guys have the Focal speakers. I mean, just combination of all the gear that you chose, it's just all quality.
Some people confuse the fact that we don't have a sub.
Right.
Because I think these go down to what, 34, 37, 32, something like that.
Yeah.
And we're never wanting for bass and people, because I do a lot of hip hop, I do a lot of pop and R&B, and you have to have 60, 80, 70 hertz in there almost all the time.
Yeah.
And we've never been wanting for low end. And in my experience, it's so hard to get low end.
Yeah.
You can just trash a record if you're all wonky.
Sure.
But these are eerily transparent. You don't have to fight noise floor.
Yep.
And it's exactly what you should be hearing.
As far as treatment goes in here, we talked about the bass trapping in places, but anywhere you see black, it's fabric, you know, and it's covered with covering the insulation that's behind it. But then we put these wood slats on top of it to again not create a too oppressive sound. The ceiling cloud that's above the mix position, you notice that it's all absorptive right here because you want to kill that first reflection off the ceiling.
No doubt.
But then the back part of the cloud actually has these wood slats on it to then again break it up a little bit. I bet when people walk in here, because the outside of the building's unassuming, like it's just a concrete shell.
I always make the analogy of kind of a speakeasy.
Yeah.
Like if you don't know it, you just drive right by it. But if you're in the know kind of a thing, you walk in and you're like, oh, this is where that one party was, or I remember this one band did this thing.
And there are no windows. It's the concrete structure all the way around.
Yeah. What's people's first reaction when they walk into a place like this?
Chris gets a lot of it just because people actually want to be in the event space. When people come in for the recording studio, they're usually bugging him out there, be like, hey man, I'm doing a jazz record. And they're like, yeah, in the studio.
It's in the back,
Yeah.
But the fortunate thing about it is that it should sound terrible out there. It should sound tinny, aluminum, concrete, everything. But for recording drums, string sections I've done out there, it's weirdly, the math is just in there somewhere.
Yeah. So then we have the window over here to the live room. We'll step in there and check it out. This room had much more of a natural wood feel, but then when it came to the diffusion in the live room, we wanted to do something a little different, so we used mostly stone. Obviously, it's not a tuned diffuser as far as mathematically speaking. It's more of a random scattering that you get off of it.
Yeah.
But with this ledge stone, it's like there's all sorts of different surface textures to it. Some of them are deeper, some of them are shallower.
Yeah.
And it creates a diffusion, and it really just, I love the way this room sounds.
I've yet to find a bad spot in the room. And it's always nice to, if you don't want the proximity of a close vocal, like a Bing Crosby super close or whatever, you can back off from the mic and catch some of the room in a vocal performance.
Yeah.
And the room sounds great.
Yeah.
Sure.
To where you're not limited to, all right, let's put you in baffles, let's put a ceiling on it, and let's
Sounds
get
over
right on
here
the
where
mic.
it's quite a bit more reflective. It sounds really cool for louder, screamer kind of vocals.
Yeah.
Obviously over here it's a little tighter with the bigger traps on the wall.
I remember doing that in the design, like trying to create kind of zones that would give you a little bit different sound. It's not like a night and day difference in this room necessarily, but it gives you just some different coloration depending on where you're at.
And it's cool to have the difference between like super live John Bonham 2 mics in the you know, in the corridor / just flat dry, because in records we'll have, man, I need a big bombastic sound out of this, or I want a pillowy 70s funk kick snare hat kind of a thing. This is exactly where you put it.
Yeah.
And then if you want stuff on top of that, you can, but it's nice to have the difference of not just 3 booths that all sound the same.
Yeah.
It's big, raucous, compressed overheads, compressed rooms. And then you get in here, if you want just what it is, it's exactly what it is.
I feel like in this room, the U87 is up 99% of the time.
Oh, sure.
It's just always ready to go because...
can't beat it.
Yeah, it's just, you know, with the panel that Jared made for us, everything plugs right in, rooms talk to each other super easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a mirror image of the patch bay, so it's perfect.
I remember when we first did the design, we were thinking about putting in, you know, grommets to be able to hang panels over it to deaden it even further, but we didn't need to. I mean, it's really balanced in here even without that. Have you ever felt that you needed it to be more dead than it is?
No, even these screamy vocals or drummers that really lean on it in here, the room just stays flat. It doesn't bark back.
Also, some of the elements like you know, building in shelving in some areas, that can be really nice too. Because that's the thing, you guys know about this, but studios just never have enough storage space or places to set things down, you know, so.
Well, and I remember when I talked to you specifically at the old studio, we were hanging everything on the walls, cables, stands, and everything, and I said, I want a closet. So when you designed this studio, we got a closet. You know, it's all packed away. All the microphones go where they're supposed to go. And then the room is just for recording, and it's not for, you know, hanging 25 cables and, you know.
It looks cleaner. It gives, it's that feel.
Mitch is big on snares, so we have a lot of snares.
Yeah.
Nice. Got a lot of snares, for sure.
There's not much you can do with mic stands.
But mic stands are what
they're always ready to go. So that works out really well.
Yeah.
And the HVAC from the mini splits all ends up in the closet, not out here.
Right.
So we can shut the door and.
Yeah.
I mean, in this is a good example of the wall structure.
Yeah.
You can see the what are the isolate?
The Kinetics Isomax.
The Isomax. Those are. I remember that when the contractors putting together, they didn't understand the concept of that. And they were trying to chintz on them. Like, no. Those have to go specifically on the wall where they're supposed to go.
You have to have the spacing right, and then also for a lot of contractors, like. Obviously, it's ingrained in them to mount everything into the studs.
No doubt.
And it's like after you put the clips up, you can no longer hit the studs anymore. So it's a little counterintuitive. You mentioned a little bit of some of the genres that you do in here. Like what's the most that you do in this space?
Probably at least half, maybe 60, 70 is probably hip hop.
Okay.
We've gotten kind of a reputation for doing some pretty good records out of here. And it's frankly easier and kind of cheaper than a full band.
Sure.
You know, you have to rehearse, you have to get your lyrics and stuff, but you can buy a already mixed pro level industry ready beat.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of vocal production. We've been getting some more jazzier stuff recently. And it's cool to be kind of a hybrid in that, you know, we'll do drums in the booth, so just totally dry.
Yeah.
And then we'll do string section out in the live room. And it's kind of having the tightness or the room when you want it. You can see kind of the germination of you'll do a record that may be in a genre or a very niche kind of subgenre that you've never done. And then 7 people will walk in and be like, man, I heard this record. Was that you who did it?
Yeah. But yeah, when this one came around, it was really cool to have something here local. I mean, we've done not a ton of studios here. We did one for Paul George when he played for the Pacers, you know, like a little while back. But most of our work here locally have been, you know, churches, and we did the Phoenix Theater here and the cabaret as well. But not a lot of studios. So it's
and I noticed your studios seem to always get picked up by Mix Magazine in new recording studio edition.
Yeah.
We were featured in there.
Yeah,
We were like, holy, that is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, like, I do presentations a lot, and I show pictures of studios we've done, and this one always gets, like, audible gasps. Like, they're just
Really?
like, what? Like, this is, yeah, I think they really like the fact that, you know, in the control room here, we skewed more towards natural woods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in the live room there, it's stone. And I think people like that kind of contrast.
All right, so let's go out and check the event space out. So we've got these big pump tables that were made out of water ammonia pumps. They fabricated glass tables out of them. We have another bar back here. And then as you kind of go out into the event space, we've got the big LED wall for presentations, for video playback. And then above us, we have about 20 plus moving headlights for dance party. Right now, it's kind of set for ambiance. We've got a DJ booth way up top. You can kind of see over here on top of the recording studio. The top of the recording studio is made as a standing surface. We're still in the process of getting the railing put up there so that we can put people up there. But that's sort of our, VIP lounge. You can see kind of the red curtains behind it. That's this kind of upper mezzanine space. Just there's some couches up there. Over here on this side of the building, on the east side, you have these large commercial HVAC fans that are just for show. Another bar over here. This is our kind of our restroom cluster in this area. We have men's rooms, women's rooms, and we have a guest bathroom. And then upstairs is our, with these two big stairwells, is our mezzanine area. We have a large antique mirror from somewhere in the 1900s. And then we've got another bar area up here, so we have 3 bar areas. This railing up here is really good for like concerts when we have the stage out, for VIP access, that kind of thing. It's roughly 6,000 square feet, probably closer to 7 with the mezzanine areas. Our sound system, we have a big JBL sound system that's up in the air. There's 4 3-way speakers that point down to the dance floor, so this is sort of the center of it all, the center image.
So when we first got in here, we were kind of shooting for the Austin city limits kind of a thing. So we put a mic panel on the opposite side of the control room. So we kind of took a DIY approach and I wired it. But instead of taking just from bands doing live stuff, we've been fortunate enough to be able to record out here. We don't need a mobile recording rig. You could actually record a band live or out there and have it run through a professional studio as opposed to on a Zoom where you just take it out of the board and mix it later. I've done like full jazz bands out here. They're not, crazy loud or anything. The dynamics are there. If you start to put up rooms, we had the Phil Collins listen back mic hung in the ceiling and you get a big Bonham Phil Collins kind of sound. We have the ACs going on right now, but if you mic it right, you can get the tail of like a fade or anything and you can't hear anything, but it's got a nice decay when it shouldn't. It's a sweet sounding room. It makes for an interesting place to hang your hat, for sure. Indianapolis is kind of known for being Swiss cheese in different neighborhoods and kind of stuff.
Sure.
But I feel like we're on the verge of kind of a burgeoning kind of up in the musical culture. Because we got crazy talented people here.
Yeah.
And probably one of the worst parts about my job is hearing some stuff on the radio and going, man, I got 9 people in my Rolodex that would just body this.
Yes, yeah.
But they're not from LA, New York, New Orleans, Atlanta.
Yeah, well, I recently took the staff to go see Snarky Puppy at Fisher's Nickel Plate thing.
I saw them at the Vogue. They're killer.
Yeah, they're awesome. But they started the show like after the first song or so. They just talked about like all the musical history that's come out of Indianapolis.
Yeah.
Like there's just so many good players, and some of them aren't huge names because of just geography, which is crazy.
We had Wes Montgomery's son come in here and listen to some of the Rob Dixon stuff too, and it's when you have that kind of a lineage in the culture on Indiana Avenue and stuff that you read about, it's no wonder that we have really talented people here.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you guys sitting down with us.
Thanks, Gav. Appreciate it.